can't change how much or where money goes in these programs, or really how much goes in these programs, until you change the underlying law that created them. So that's where you kind of get into the discussion about, well, should we raise the Social Security age? That would require, for example, that would require a change in the underlying programs, the law of the underlying programs, and that's when you can start affecting this part of the pie, which is 2/3 of our yearly spending. So this is the kind of discussion that we're trying to have all over the United States. Because many of us believe that over the long term, this debt, well, over the long term, it's a fact, this debt is going to bankrupt us. We also believe that if we act now, through the budget, to get at some of these mandatory spending programs, that we could eventually, like over 75 years, get our $14 trillion debt down to zero, assuming a 2.8 GDP growth per year. 75 years, a long way off. If we made the change tomorrow, it wouldn't affect jobs. It wouldn't do anything really immediately. If we act now, we can make these changes without affecting anyone who's currently relying on any of these programs or would rely on them in the near term. Folks that have planned their whole retirement around counting on a Social Security for a chunk of that, for example, wouldn't need to be affected at all. If we wait, then that's when we become Greece. People riot in the streets of Greece because all their lives they were promised something. And now the Greek government is back into a corner where they have to turn that off tomorrow and affect people who are already relying on those programs. We don't have to do that now if we act now. We won't have to do that in the future if we act now. So for a lot of us, we're thinking long-term fiscal health of this country. But we also want to think short-term as well, in terms of growing the economy, in terms of jobs, in terms of hopefully getting that 2.8% assumption that we've made up a lot more in terms of GDP, so we can eventually shrink that 75-year window down. How do we do that? I believe the only way that we can really do that is by getting the boot of the federal government off the neck of businesses. I sit on education and workforce. We deal with union issues. We deal with regulations in the workplace. We deal with EPA even. We deal with OSHA. I'm in a position to help you if you believe that there are overly onerous, nonsensical regulations being put upon you by the federal government. I've run a bureaucracy for 8 years as Secretary of State. I regulated several industries for 8 years. I'm very rare in Congress. Certainly there are some business owners. Certainly there are politicians that came from state legislatures. But the very few of us have actually run a bureaucracy. Very few of us have actually regulated industry. So I want to, and I think I was successful as Secretary of State in doing some of that because I did these meetings often. You might not have been at them unless you practice securities, unless you are a mortgage broker or something like that. So I was in a very boutique area of certain industries. But we can bring that experience to bear. There are two main functions of Congress. You can either pass laws or you can exercise your oversight function under the Constitution to oversight the federal bureaucracy. We have been given direct orders from John Boehner, Eric Cantor, and I certainly agree with them, to use the oversight function even more than we use the legislative function. And by that, I certainly don't mean, and I don't think they do either, the gotcha politics of going and finding the Charlie Rangels of the world and bringing them to justice. I'm sure that'll happen naturally. But what I mean by oversight is finding those regulations that are hurting you now from growing, from creating jobs, down to the legal citation, and bringing the agency head or other bureaucrats that are responsible for executing or for creating those regulations to our committee to have them defend those regulations or otherwise withdraw them. That hasn't been done. That oversight function of Congress has not been done in decades. For decades, legislative success was determined by how many bills you may pass. I submit there are enough bills. I'd like to repeal. I'd like to be co-sponsor bills that repeal parts of existing laws. In fact, we just passed one yesterday. I was a co-sponsor of a bill that and was successfully passed that gets rid of that 1099 requirement that was passed in the Affordable Health Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. The idea that every time you have a vendor that you pay $600 or more to do a 1099 transaction for. That was in the healthcare bill. No business even being an actual business really being a part of the tax code, but it was there. I've heard from many of you all over the state, all over this country, that's just a ridiculous, onerous requirement of reporting. That in itself would have required 14,000 new IRS agents just to collect and administer these forms that you would all have to turn in anytime you spent $600 or more with it. We passed that out of the House in a bipartisan way, got rid of that. That's a grand example of exactly what I'm talking about. But they don't have to be that high profile. Any regulation, think OSHA, think MSHA, think Department of Labor, anything like that, even if it's not on or doesn't come through my budget committee or the workforce and education committee, I can work with you to get that regulation off your back so you can thrive in a private sector, in a free market economy to grow jobs. So with that, I hope I generated some discussion. If not, continue to throw some ideas out. But I really would like to hear from you on everything I just said, and things I didn't say. Yeah.
Well, actually, I just wanted to throw out a simplistic view of a possible idea out there. Obviously, the thing that we need to do is to get more people working. That's probably the big strain upon the government right now. I mean, it's easy to say that, but one way I think that could be done is to go ahead and encourage innovation. Basically, businesses that we run, if your sales and revenues are lacking, what you need to do is you need to reinvent yourself. You need to come up with a new product or service that you can provide so that you can increase revenues. So I think what the government could do right now is to, there again, reinvent itself by nature of stimulating innovation and then securing U.S. manufacturing, something near and dear to my heart. Some of the examples, probably not the best examples, but the dot-com boom was something that happened that all of a sudden increased the nation's economy significantly. How did we get out of the last Great Depression? Well, the works programs that were involved there. Basically, I think the role of the government at this point, if they were to stimulate innovation and to secure U.S. manufacturing, then that would help out significantly, and primarily in the areas of energy or high-tech manufacturing. When you talk about regulation, I sent your office a pretty lengthy email